So let's just get more on Boeing and a word with David Learmount, the aviation expert and consulting editor at the website Flightglobal. David, welcome back. Good to see you. Let's just pick up on that point. I hope you were able to hear it from our correspondent John Terry at Wall Street, suggesting that Boeing should be less aggressive and should get control of its suppliers. What do you think is the problem?
Well, first of all, I agree with everything that John Terrett said. Yes, I did hear all he said. Calhoun is facing questioning. He's already had to admit that, as he put it himself, Boeing's culture at the moment is far from perfect. Well, he's got to say that because it's quite obvious that it's far from perfect. This started, at least it started showing, the problems started showing loud and clear in 2017 when an Indonesian airline, Boeing 737 MAX, crashed. And then a year later, in 2018, March 2018, another one crashed, and there were nearly 350 people who got killed on, those two airplanes. Now, nowadays, it's absolutely, it just didn't happen any longer that modern airplanes by Western manufacturers just had mistakes in them like that, because it was a piece of very, very bad design in which Boeing had broken all of its own rules with a piece of basically control software, which it hadn't even told the pilots of its airplanes about. And the pilots had got taken by surprise. So, look, if you've got that as a background, that's where you're coming from. Boeing has set a program for tidying its act up in all sorts of ways, but it's got a long way to go, as John Terrett correctly said.
How much trouble is the company in when it comes to rebuilding its reputation? I mean, it's simply too big to fail, isn't it?
I wouldn't say it's too big to fail, but I think it's basically, look, if you remember what Boeing used to be like, let's say 20 years ago, what we all thought of it, it was probably the primary aerospace engineering company in the world. It's got a serious competitor now in Airbus industry, or Airbus as it's now just called on its own. And Airbus is not having the same problems as Boeing. So one of the things which is a real problem for the Boeing brand is that it is not looking at all good against its main competitor. And it's got to do something about that. The whole world is watching. I mean, I know how good. I mean, I've been watching the industry for more than 40 years now. And I know how good Boeing has been. It can be that again. I think we all have faith that it probably will be. But it's got to get away from, I think, the problem that it has at the moment is it's got greedy, it's got over self-confident, it considers the shareholder dividends before anything else, and it's tried to cut corners to cut costs. They know they have to. Calhoun and his colleagues know that situation has to be reversed. They've started down that road, but they've got a long way to go.
Let's say you're appointed the CEO next month. How do you fix it? What do you do?
Well, first of all, you have to re-establish a proper relationship with your frontline employees. They're the people who are fitting parts to the airplanes, who are on the final assembly line. They've got to carry out quality control, not only in their own factories, their own final assembly lines, but they have a lot of suppliers, as John correctly said. They have a lot of suppliers. Those suppliers are supplying, equipment and components to Boeing specifications. Boeing has got to up the quality control at its suppliers. Boeing is ultimately responsible for quality control of everything that it receives. That is the culture that any large aerospace company should have in a totally safety-critical industry.
David, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for coming on the programme. David Learmount, the aviation expert and consulting editor at Flightglobal.